Hi guys, Rob again, back with another vid. Now unfortunately I haven't got a video showing you lots of lovely shots of the south of France and recording studios because I didn't go. Yes, I ended up getting a stomach bug, which meant that I even got myself to the airport. Well, I say I got myself, my lovely girlfriend Emma drove me to the airport. She got up at 4 a.m, or we left at 4 a.m. and got to Bristol Airport at 5 a.m. But yeah, I wasn't in any fit state. And I saw the bass player and his girlfriend there as well, Andy, Mags and Sam. And they were like, "Cool, you don't look too well." And I was like, "I'm not. I think I'm going to go back home." So Emma very graciously stuck around with me at the airport for another half an hour before I thought about going through customs and everything. And I just couldn't go. I just wasn't well enough. So we have to reschedule that session with Paul, which is a shame. Well, that's good, but it's a shame that I didn't go. So there I was saying, "I'm away for 4 days, guys." I wasn't. I was here on the settee for 4 days. But anyway, coming back to what we're going to talk about today. Well, I got some interesting feedback from the self-analysis video from last time. Yeah, I'm glad I put that out there, and it seems to be helping some people and people looking at things a little bit differently. And I also want to go back to the reverberation video I spoke about, which is quite esoteric and quite ethereal and all that kind of stuff. But I think it's quite important. And I was just talking to a student of mine, and it's just Kelly. Thank you, Kelly, for making me think all this. It's something that, all these things that I talk about in these videos that aren't just demonstrating something or whatever, or doing record reviews or whatever, talking about drum kits. It's getting more and more obvious to me that, a lot of this stuff is kind of influencing my choices, my music making, my drumming, of course. And it's from a place that, it's fascinating me. I'm not sure why it's coming through in the way it is, meaning that obviously I was taught by my father, and I can read music, I can play charts, I can write drum charts, I can do all the formal things, the rudiments, and I understand all of this, I understand styles, and hence why I work a lot in the studio, but to get where I am. I mean, that's obvious. But it's funny, over the last 10 years, why have I started to try and unpick these things? So meaning a paradiddle is always going to be a paradiddle, single, double, triple. But over the years, I think of it as a sticking pattern rather than just the rudiment. So yes, I know my brain flags up I'm playing a paradiddle when I play it. But when I phrase it on the drum set, I'm phrasing it in a way where I've stopped thinking about it being a paradiddle. Now, that's the easiest way of me putting it to a concept that we can all understand. But I've been kind of unpicking everything all the way through, stylistically as well. The fusing ideas together, just because something's a Latin rhythm, why can't you play that in a heavy metal band? Those kind of things. Whether they all work out or not doesn't matter. But the fact that I'm thinking it is the step. That was the first step of imagining this kind of thing. And of course, as a teacher as well, I'm always struck between the two worlds, or stuck rather, between the two worlds of the formal, which is, as I say, you have to have the formal training, but also this flip side of that, which is so many great musicians who have made it without much music education and come up with some really original stuff and became famous and almost received cult status, a lot of these people, Beatles being one of them, I suppose. But we were talking about Susie from Susie and the Banshees, and that punk, that raw element of punk which came into new wave, and how Talking Heads and bands like that evolved. On paper, and the B-52s, on paper you would think, oh no, they're not very good, are they? Some of these songs just go on and on, there's no key changes, not a lot happens, it's kind of a bit monotone, a bit boring. And then all of a sudden, a few years later, they've learned that extra chord, or they've learned to play the piano, or they've bought themselves a sequencer or something, and it's changed. And I talked once before about whether too much education is a bad thing. And as I say, this isn't one or the other. I just bringing this up again because I think it's important, along with the reverberation thing. It's kind of, you can't tell a room full of students at BIM or ACM that they don't need to learn their instrument, the ins and outs of their instrument, because that would be wrong. But at the same time, making each of them stand up and give me examples in popular music history where someone has come along and broken those rules by not knowing the formal stuff and made a living and become cult status. And we'll still talk about this band, Velvet Underground, let's say, for the end of time. They did their thing, and it's like, whoa. Of course, the flip side of that is you'll have people saying, well, they didn't last very long though, did they? Because they couldn't do much with it. And then again, you could maybe throw out, dare I say it, the Beatles, and say, okay, well, they did. They made every album, nearly every album's different in their 8 years together in the limelight. Nearly every album's different. Once you get past the first 2 or 3, Hard Day's Night onwards, it's like, hang on a minute. And someone wrote the other day about Tomorrow Never Knows. They said from She Loves You into Tomorrow Never Knows in like 2 years or whatever, or 3 years, whatever it was. That's incredible. That's a mental kind of trajectory, Anyway, let's get away from those bands for a minute. So, this constant ramble, like I'm doing now, but the drumming rambles that I do, and I realised what that was all about. It wasn't just me trying to log ideas necessarily and say this is where I am at this time to share, to get more views and more likes. It was kind of a necessity to kind of play feelings on the drum set, express them on the drum set and to get them across. And now I'm trying to sort of realise as well, when I make those choices, where are they coming from? They can't just always just be from mixed kind of mixing things together and routines. They can't all be like that. Hence why when they go wrong sometimes, that's interesting, because I think it was Hendrix or something who said, I make loads of mistakes when I'm playing, because I'm always working all the time. And I think that's great. You're working on new things. I've seen Vinnie Colaiuta play things and go, and Tony Williams as well. I quoted in that lesson. I said, Tony, when he's really pushed himself, he'll, and there's even a clip of the great Buddy Rich doing a thing and a drum solo somewhere in a high school, and the camera is way back in the audience and they zone in as much as they can, but it's an old VHS. But he's doing this thing where his left is going 9 to the dozen, man. It's going like crazy. And his right hand is playing choke strokes up on the 13-inch tom, just single strokes. But the left hand is going mental. And he sort of goes, and he does it for a while. But it's the fastest I've ever seen his left hand go in that situation. And it's incredible. So when these people are reaching, I love the fact that they're getting to that point where it breaks. So I've never got an issue at clinics or masterclasses when I'm doing an improvisation of getting to that point, because if it's good enough for those guys, it's good enough for me. I'm kind of trying to bridge the world between learning and then unlearning. I think it's a process that, if you're going to be a classical musician or something, then probably not. Because you don't improvise anyway. A lot of them do these days, I know, and I'll probably get people commenting saying, oh, it's different these days. And I know that, but that's not my world, so I don't want to talk about something I don't know about. But in the past, it was always like, put music in front of you, play it, ask them to improvise, and they'll look at you and go, that's not what I do. That's not what I was trained for, and that's totally fair enough. But it's kind of like learning all of that stuff and then trying to reproduce it in a way where it feels original, unlearned, and can grab emotion and make you feel something. And as I say, it's the trouble with all of this in a way is it's subjective. That's the word that hangs above all this stuff. It's, that subjective. It's all subjective, as it should be. But I'm just giving you my side of the story, and how I feel about that whole thing. So as I say, when I'm in a room full of people at a seat of learning, the lecturers do not want to hear me say some of these things because they're like, don't say that. They've signed up to do this course. But the truth of it is, when you're out in the big world, you need to make that music come to life. In the music I'm in, contemporary, popular music or whatever, and jazz or whatever, and certainly not classical or show life or business, none of that, where you just sit and read and play. That's not my bag. So for this side of things, which is what I'm talking about, which I feel like I've got, 35, 40 years experience, nobody, when you're hiring or working with musicians like that, and they're showcasing their wares, you're looking for that little bit of originality. Sometimes the drummer that comes in to the room and just plays a solo and knocks it out of the park, that's great. It shows a completely a great imagination and originality and all that. But can they then sort of bolt down and do something a little bit different ask them to play something a bit odd, can they do it, And not always. And I guess I've learned to unplay because some people wanted me to sound like Rob Bryan, but as if I didn't know what I was doing, if that makes sense. So again, this video is going to be a bit of a ramble, but there's just loads of little points I want to get in. It's hard to tie it up because I'm still working on it myself. So it'd always be like taking whoever you are watching this now, and if you are, thank you, playing the way you play and playing exactly what you do, but then trying to slightly unplay that so you get the elements of you, but without the comfort of just being you, right? It's a hard one to get into. It's like when I was liking it to people that sit down, artists that I've worked with, that don't play an instrument and they don't really know the key they're singing in, they don't know the key the song's in, but they still sit at a piano and come up with something cool. And then one of the band members will say, well, what you're playing there is almost a G chord, but it could be this. And it's like, no, I like how I'm playing it. Is that cool? It's like, oh. And then you invent something. As I say, it's like the underground movement of the 60s. It's like the underground movement of the punk scene. It's kind of how music can be made sometimes. And it's kind of through having to do it rather than sitting down and learning it. And I think it's just a good lesson is, as I say, unlearning kind of what you've learned a little bit, getting back into this reverberation thing. I'm still fascinated by that. And of course, please comment below, whatever you think, just place your comments below on all of this stuff, if you're highly opinionated or not, that's all good. But yeah, this reverberation thing, I was thinking, if you, there's got to be something that happens, right? When a group of people are talking, and we all do it in a pub or in a cafe or at home, on the phone, on FaceTime. There's a rhythm, there's a rapport, there's something that happens between everybody that kind of falls into a thing. Hence why you see all these people, a lot of these drummers getting clips from cartoons or from films and playing along with it, whether they're playing the dialogue at the same time or they're letting it happen and they're doing a rhythm underneath, stitching it up as a groove. That's been done for years, that kind of thing. That's cool. So that's kind of proof that it has got a rhythm, it has got a feeling. Equally, when, two lovers are meeting, and they hug and kiss, and there's what's the rhythm that goes on there? We could be like, or boom, boom, Miles Davis was always talking about Prince knew how to play drums and get people to have sex just from the groove, I'm sure James Brown, you could say the same about James Brown. There's something sexy about those grooves, But yeah, I'm not trying to make it as sort of base as that, really. I'm trying to just get a bit deeper. What is the rhythm that goes on between two people? We're on about auras above our heads, colours, and I believe in that too. And I believe the auras, obviously they mix, but there's auras above us, and with the groove, people won't accept that as much, a rhythm. Then, auras, I can kind of get that. The colours, I can kind of see what you're talking about. But when you start to talk about rhythms, people kind of blank over. But there's got to be a rhythm in that. There's got to be, an excitement between people, the joy. What's that rhythm? There's something that goes round a room, or at a funeral, dare I say it. The wake is always upbeat. But, the actual funeral itself can be, not always, but can be quite dire, more ballad-like. You see a film and somebody starts playing something in a minor key and on piano or something, it's like, that's really sad. But imagine if you saw that same scene with different music behind it, something in a major key, slightly faster, would that still come across? So I'm fascinated with, in the drum world, what those things are. On piano, or a tuned instrument, minor, major, that's an easy way to get around it, right, to a certain degree. But the rhythm of life I think transcends all of that. And the patterns that we play, when we're jamming, are we picking up on stuff that's in the airwaves naturally, or is it just learned behaviour? That's anyway. I like to talk about these things. 15 minutes, I think that'll do on this sort of discussion. But yeah, leave some points below. If you've got something to say, some comments, please leave them below. I'm always fascinated to hear what people think about this, and I'm studying it all the time. Anyway, I'm going to tie that up there, and I hope you're well. As I say, leave the comments below if there are any, and just let me know what you think. Just interesting to yeah. And I'll speak to you soon. So I'll see you next week. All right. Cheers, guys. Bye.